Hello YouTube, this is Ahmed here, bringing you another episode of the Wargame European Escalation Archives. Today we'll be looking at the Warsaw PACT Tanks and Infantry in episode 3. Okay, so let's start off with tanks. Okay, so first off we have the BMP 685. Now this is quite an unusual tank for Warsaw PACT. All it is it's got a gun, and that's it. However, the gun is a good one. It's got a range of well, as you can see, about 2,000 meters, which is fairly good. It is very accurate. Unlike most Warsaw PACT units, you can guarantee a hit. It's quite powerful, and it's got a lot of ammunition, which it should. It's very fast, and its stabilizer for PACT terms is very good at normal, and it's fairly well armored with 2 front and side and 1 on the rear and the top. So this is a sort of like a mobile hit and run unit where you drive it around, hit your enemy's weak spots and then retreat quite fast. It's built for maneuver warfare. So yeah, quite an interesting little tank here. Okay, after that we have the Flamethrower tanks, 3 of these in Warsaw PACT. There's the Flampas TO55 from East Germany, and then there's a TO55 from Warsaw PACT. I believe they are the same. Yep, they're completely identical. So basically it's a T55's gun with the same kind of 2,000 meters range, but its accuracy is fairly poor and damage isn't that good either. It also has less ammunition for its gun than the regular T55, but the advantage of it is the flamethrower. Now flamethrowers are primarily built for 2 reasons. One, which is burning stuff out of villages and towns, very good against all unarmored units. And second, as a morale weapon, any unit that's hit by a flamethrower almost instantly becomes routed and useless. And unlike NATO flamethrower units, this one still has the gun. So basically this is sort of like getting close, so then you stun them with the flamethrower and then you can just shoot them to your heart's content with the gun until they're dead. That's pretty much how it works. However, in the current version of Wargame, flamethrower units aren't advisable because the line of sight allowance that they were granted as an artillery unit has been broken, which means they need a direct line of sight to target stuff, which generally means that the infantry will be able to hit them with bazookas. So overall, they're not that useful. Also, the Soviet TO55 can be upgraded to the TO62. It's a similar idea, except to the TO55, except it's a T62, so you've got a slightly more powerful gun. It's slower. That's about it. I don't actually think there's not much going for the TO62 by the looks of it. It's got more frontal armor, which is a bonus, but it's got like poor range, poor optics. It's slower. So yeah, overall, this would be the mobile flamethrower unit. This is the sort of static flamethrower unit. Overall, I wouldn't use them too much. Next, you've got the sort of keep as kept tanks for Warsaw PACT. First off is the T-34 variant of East Germany and Poland, identical in every way. These are very good for combating infantry and sort of VAB charges. Obviously they're a World War II relic, so they've not got a lot going for them. They're slow, armor 1 all around. They've got no stabilizers, so if they're moving, they're not going to hit anything basically. But they've got a gun. It's got quite a lot of ammunition, and they've got a machine gun, and it's quite hard to get something with a gun and a machine gun for this kind of price. So this is a very good way to stop infantry, because they can use their gun to beat the vehicles, and then when the infantry come out, you can use their machine gun on them. And you can generally outnumber quite a lot of infantry units with this tank, just because it's so cheap. That's what I'd recommend it for. I used to run T34s, because they're quite a fun unit to use, but I don't anymore. Might go back to them actually in the future. Next up, we've got the T55. The East German and Soviet version are, as again, peas in the pod, except the East German variants upgrade tree doesn't go as high, so I'd recommend the Soviet one. So in this, the basic T-55 has got a gun with a decent amount of ammunition, but it's very weak. It's also got bad stabilizer optics and speed, common among pack units, but it's got a decent operational range, so it can get quite far, but it might not get there in time. Also, it's got, you know, the standard 1 level of armor for most tanks, but it's got 2 frontal armor. Again, you know, the T-55s are generally cheap units that you can throw at the enemy, maybe throw them all along the border, and then even if the ones that hit their strong points are incinerated instantly, the ones that go along the rear can go, you know, can do a bit of damage. In terms of the upgrade tree, go into the AM, gets you a nice little machine gun, quite useful, especially because the base variant has absolutely no way of dealing with helicopters, even if they're directly overhead. Machine gun offers some kind of bonus, also gives it a bit more armor, stabilizer, that kind of thing. I'd recommend upgrading it. It's an extra 15 points, but it makes it a much better tank. 5 on top of that gives you a 10 km/h speed boost, and then another 10 on top of that gives you an 80 km, quite useful, because the range, it increases the range of the tank to 1900 to 2600, making it quite a decent little tank. Also gives it a bit more armor and some better optics, which is always a bonus. So yeah, the T-55 got an interesting one, but it can go from keep spamming unit here to a fairly competent battle tank here. It's got everything. It's a sort of basic, you've got everything you need in a one tank kind of unit. Upgrade into this and we get the T-62. This is basically a T-55 but better, but more expensive. So it starts off as usual with a kind of gun. The stats compared to the T-55 are improved. It's slower, but its gun's better. It also gets more armor as standard. Then as you upgrade it, you get the standard machine gun, upgraded a bit more. Quite a big price jump there of 15. For only a slightly better gun. I wouldn't recommend the over 1975 version for this reason. Upgrade again, you get the nice 80 km and a bit of an armor boost. So the T-6M is sort of comparable to the T-55, but a bit more expensive. Then the M1 version gets a much better 80 km. That's actually a pretty nasty 80 km. It's got the full 2800 range, and it's pretty accurate and it's pretty powerful. So this is a pretty, you know, strong tank for only 70. The only problem is it's only got 5 missiles. So this is a good 80 km platform with a gun and a machine gun to back it up. But just remember, it'll run out of ammo quick, so keep supplying it. And then if you give it another 25, you get a bit of more armor in the front and the side, and quite a good gun there. It's probably good enough to go up against most NATO units, but at 95 this is getting quite a bit expensive. Probably would stick to the M1 for this. Then to one of my personal favorites, the T-64. This tank is sort of huge firepower, but not that good armor. So basic version, 55 points, but we got the machine gun. We've got a gun, which is a pretty good one, 2,100 meters. You know, decent accuracy, good power. It's also got 5 frontal armor, which is quite good compared to the earlier PACT tanks, but it doesn't have any stabilizer. Its range isn't that commendable, but it is 65 in terms of speed, so it is faster than the others. Then a bit of an upgrade gives you a basic 80 km. A lot of power in this one at 13, but the accuracy isn't that good. You might need to throw some veterancy on it to make sure the accuracy is decent enough to hit. Then another 5 points gives you a 5 km/h upgrade, and a bit of an improvement in optics. And then the BV model, which is quite an interesting one, it gives you a better gun and a full 10 frontal armor. So this thing can really take up the hits from the front. Overall, I wouldn't recommend this version. It's a very good tank because it's got a lot of range, good frontal armor. So in battling NATO tanks, this is a pretty good one. It costs 130, so it's definitely one of the heavy tank in the the heavy tank category, but it's got a good 80 km. Give it a bit of veterancy so you can make sure it hits, and its main gun can, you know, go up against most NATO tanks, and the 10 front armor means they'll have a hard time punching through it unless they're using 80 kms. That's usually, this is one of my, when I first played Wargame, this was definitely one of my favourite tanks to deploy, but with the 80 kms as powerful as they are at the moment, it can be tricky to justify it. Then we move on to the T-72. Again, the East German variant has its own version. It's actually a bit cheaper than the Warsaw PACT basic unit. I don't think it's got as good armor. Yeah, it loses a bit of armor out, but it's only 5 points, so they're mostly the same. And then the M variant has got a better gun, similar to the Soviet version. So overall, the T-72 is sort of the opposite of the T-64. They don't have the same kind of firepower as the T-64, but they have good armor, because this one is only 45 and it has 6 frontal armor, 4 side and 2 everywhere else. So this is a pretty, you know, this is a fair amount of armor for just 45 points. Throw in another 15 and you get a better stabilizer, better optics, and a bit more armor. Nope, but you do get a better gun. And then throw in another 60 points, which seems quite a bit, but you get a very fast tank, got a lot of armor, and it's got an 80 km, which is a good accuracy and very good AP power. Like at the severe 80 km, that's a pretty nasty one. It also gets a gun upgrade, does it? Yeah, it gets a gun upgrade as well, but this is 120 points, so it's probably comparable to the T-64BV in most ways. Even looks like it outclasses a bit, except the armor is weaker. The T-64BV's got definitely the 10 front armor, which is definitely a good plus point over the T-72B. But the T-72B has a pretty good 80 km. This is definitely a main battle tank you'd be interested in using. Then we move on to the T-80. This is sort of like the main power basic version. It's got a very good gun, very damaging, good range, machine gun, fast, and it's got 8 frontal armor and 4 side, but it costs 90. Then upgrade it, you get a basic 80 km, then a bit of a better gun and better armor. Upgrade it again, you get the very nasty 80 km, but now it's an AP power 15, so this is probably a one hit kill for pretty much any ground unit in the game, except the Challenger possibly. And then you give it another 20 upgrade, and you get a slightly better gun and good optics. This is actually an interesting, oh no, it's a good stabilizer, so this is actually one of the few PACT tanks you could use on the move. So I think it's got the best stabilizer of a PACT tank, but again, you're paying 160 for this, so NATO tanks are going to have exceptional stabilizers, so keep that in mind. But overall, these are sort of like a center of your points. You spend a lot on them, but these guys can dish out a lot of firepower and armor. There's sort of everything in one, but cost the earth kind of tank. Overall, these are less useful than they were before, just because 80 games are so powerful. It does armor can become meaningless, because if you spend more for armor, it just makes you a bigger target with 80 games, and it doesn't give you that much more protection. So yeah, but they're definitely an interesting tank to use. Okay, I think that'll do it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll be finalising our look at the Warsaw PACT units by looking at the infantry. But until then, thank you and goodbye.